he's got black scholarships to Oxford and Cambridge, right?
True.
He's got Murky Publishing where he has to publish black authors.
Yeah.
So him aligning with McDonald's, to me, it was for the bag, obviously, and I just think it made no sense.
Hey, that's more scholarships. That's more
Potentially,
scholarships.
but I think
use your own argument against you. More scholarships, more black authors published. Like, why are we vilifying someone who's doing really good work? Hey everybody, welcome back. You missed us for 1 week. I wasn't doing well, but we're back. Techish in the house, one half of your hosting duo here. Abadesi of Hustle Crew with my buddy
Michael Bahane, the CEO of Pocket Jobs. Let's go.
CEO of Chicken McNuggets. Question, right? We got to talk about brand partnerships. We got to talk about controversial brand deals.
Yeah.
And I want to know, if there was a food company whose politics did not align with yours, how much money would they have to pay you for you to do a campaign with them? Because obviously I'm talking about Stormzy and McDonald's.
Yeah, don't put me on the spot. Don't try to see and suss
Would
out.
you sell out for 6 chicken nuggets for £1 million?
So Stormzy obviously is a very popular rapper out here in the UK. If you don't know, based out. If you're in the States, I mean, I don't think he's that famous in the States, but yeah, he's got, of the UK rappers that we have, he's definitely one of the more famous ones. And essentially, he was relatively quite vocal about the situation in Gaza and said free Palestine on quite a few occasions and seemed to be quite aligned in that direction. Now, McDonald's, which is the company he's done a brand deal with, caught some flack and backlash because it appeared as if they were kind of pro-IDF, or I think the local franchisees out there were. So that's now damaged kind of global McDonald's, because as a franchise-led brand, they probably don't have complete control over what their franchisees do, but it doesn't look like they, reprimanded them or did anything to kind of tell them off. So they have been caught up in the kind of BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. So now Stormzy, who seemed to be an advocate of the whole Free Palestine cause, is now doing a brand deal. And a lot of the fans of his seem to be unhappy, or it seems to be a vocal component of his fan base. There's been posters now posted up saying Stormzy sold out. What's your thoughts on this? I think we can take it from the perspective of whether you agree with it or not. Or what do you think brand managers, artist managers need to be more careful about what they're presenting to their clients on a plate?
Do you know what I actually think it is? I actually think, and this is interesting because as you were talking, I was like, do you know what? Let me actually check the latest data, the latest information on the link between McDonald's and IDF. And I am reading an article from April, BBC News, McDonald's to buy back Israeli restaurants after boycotts. So McDonald's actually entered into a deal with the franchisee to return 225 Israeli outlets after people boycotted them for feeding IDF. And I just think this, to me, is what is wrong with public reactions today. Like, I feel that people reacted to Stormzy because they felt on some level like they were doing some kind of activism. I don't even know what. If they were just like, I'm still with Palestine, I'm wearing my watermelon, you out there supporting McDonald's when they were feeding Israeli soldiers, like, I'm against you. Whatever people were thinking when they got all up in arms about it on the internet. And I just think it's like incredibly hypocritical, because it's like, one, how do you even fact check what's going on? Like, do you even know if this is still the situation and therefore Stormzy is supporting it? But then also, you're eating McDonald's. It just annoys me that I just feel like 99% of the people who are complaining about it probably eaten McDonald's themselves. And then secondly, the conversation moves on from the fact that Stormzy still used his platform to say free Palestine, right? Like, he still did that. And lots of people did not do that. Many artists didn't do that. And now he's being punished for making money. I don't get it. What do people want? What do people want?
So I think it's difficult, but I think McDonald's probably made that move in terms of buying back the franchises from the kind of Israeli vendors, probably because they saw a massive amount of brand damage in the Middle East.
Of course.
Globally.
And also Muslim countries are going to stop eating their food, and 100%. That's money. That's also
100%.
Is money.
So the type of individuals that are kind of very pro Palestine, I'd count myself amongst those. Obviously, you've got younger people, you've got people from...
The way you said that made it sound like I wasn't. Like, obviously, free Palestine, free all oppressed people.
No. Techish is among them. But I would say, obviously, people from Muslim backgrounds as well, in the diaspora, as well as, in their homelands. So I feel like Stormzy was someone they approached to kind of tap back into kind of Gen Z young people energy. I'm sure they were doing, surveys and could see that amongst that cohort, there may have been some, backlash. So I feel like Stormzy, there's a term called sports washing where basically like, certain countries might want to host an Olympics here and there to kind of wash their brand off. And I feel like in this situation, McDonald's was kind of Stormzy washing. They were like, listen, we need somebody who's young, who's got a connection with Gen Z, who can kind of revitalize our brand. Maybe, obviously, listen, McDonald's sales are probably still amazing amongst Gen Z in general, but I'm sure that they noticed something that they wanted to kind of nip in the bud, shall we say. Stormzy, somebody who's very big into fitness also. So to me, I feel like he has got the worst end of the deal. I'm sure they paid him like $5-10 million. But
was it worth it?
Was it worth it? I don't think it was.
Who else was on that list, do you think? You think like the people that did that Prime energy drink were on the list?
What, KSI and thing? No, I think, but the thing is, the reason why Stormzy is such a unique vessel is that Stormzy is somebody, yes, he's got clout amongst young people, but primarily it's also because he has a social conscience. He has come out on the Brit stage and said, yo, Theresa May, don't forget about Grenfell. He's come out and supported Jeremy Corbyn. So he's not just any normal person with a social media following. He's somebody who, quote unquote, had the people behind him to a certain extent, right? He's got black scholarships to Oxford and Cambridge, right?
True.
He's got books. He's got Murky Publishing where he has to publish black authors. This guy pays for black people to go to Cambridge, right? Just to clarify what that scholarship is, right? So him aligning with McDonald's, to me, it was for the bag, obviously, and I just think it made no sense.
Hey, that's more scholarships. That's more scholarships. But I think use your own argument against you. More scholarships, more black authors published. Like, why are we vilifying someone who's doing really good work? Like, he can crunch the numbers himself and he can decide what he wants to do. Like, to me, it's just like people are just jumping on a bandwagon to be a part of a conversation, as if, honestly, I just feel like it's some kind of weird activism people trying to do to feel like they're doing something, and you're not. You're just like,
so is there no
on someone who's doing good things? Like, net impact of Stormzy, good.
So is there no brand partnership that you would see from someone that you admire where you would be like, do you know what, I feel like you've misjudged that and I'm disappointed in you? So is there not a person who you might now look up to?
Yeah, if someone was like, hey, me and Palantir are partnering on blah, 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 like a woman leader that I admire, I'd be like, that's such a weird flex, especially since the CEO of Palantir literally on the last earnings call was like, we kill people. Woo.
But to Stormzy's fans, it's the same thing because they view that McDonald's is complicit in a quote unquote genocide, right? So to them, they're like, why are you aligning with this brand?
They're pulling out. Like
they haven't pulled out. What they've done is acquired the asset so that they can better control the brand, basically, and to avoid any more backlash. But the reality is there hasn't been like an apology. There hasn't been like, we're sorry.
I wish people were paying this much attention to like what the government is doing right now in terms of like monetary policy and fiscal policy, or paying this much attention to what businesses are doing to employer rights. Like, we're putting our attention into the wrong fight, into the wrong conflict. Like, why are we spending so much time talking about Stormzy and his McDonald's partnership? Like, if we want to be vexed, let's be vexed about like material things. Let's direct it towards our MPs, our ministers, our prime ministers, our policymakers, what's happening in the US. Let Stormzy do Stormzy. Like, I just can't get on this. I can't get on this train. I can't.
So Abadesi is going to be the first in line to get the Stormzy meal, as it's called. It includes 9 chicken nuggets, fries, 2 BBQ drips, a Sprite, and an Oreo McMuffin. Shout out to Abadesi on that one. I think also, I just want to clarify one last thing. I said quote unquote genocide. I do believe it is a genocide. I didn't mean to make that sound trivial. I heard myself back there. I thought, right, that's a bit deep. All right, cool. We will let the audience decide. I think Abadesi is going to get cooked. Abadesi is going to get cooked. Don't blame me if you get cooked on Twitter. But anyways,
come for me. I'm sorry. Like, everyone's out here like this is the thing. We're like cherry picking when capitalism is too much for us. And I think that, to me, is so lazy. If you want to dismantle the system of oppression, be committed to it. Be consistent with it. But don't sit there dipping your French fry into the barbecue sauce and then say Stormzy sold out. Like, no.
One last thing.
Sitting at home in your parents' house as an 18-year-old scrolling to TikTok and then complaining that Stormzy sold out. Like, no.
But I think you have this perception that pretty much everyone who's vocal on this, situation, this war, is basically hypocritically still using all the same products that they were once using before. And the reality is,
the companies are still there on the high street.
They're still there, but Starbucks and McDonald's have had to come out and make multiple statements and have had to address it. It's obviously impacted them in some way. So there is a cohort of people who actually are, pulling back from these products and brands. I'm not saying it's everyone. I agree with you, but there obviously is.
Let me look at Starbucks share price. Okay. Up 19.31% in the past 12 months.
Okay, fair dues. That's a good shout. That's a good shout. All right, cool, fair enough. We'll leave it at that. I'm sure the Middle Eastern sales have collapsed, but anyways, we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
So speaking of things that are a bit dark, if you were part of the 5% of Meta employees who are recently laid off, you have been labeled a low performer. So Zuck came out and said, we're trying to
Rude.
raise the bar on performance management and move out the low performers faster. They've laid off around 3,600 employees, which is approximately 5% of their global workforce. There's obviously been a lot of layoffs these last kind of 18 months, 24 months, but this one is a bit different in the sense that this is definitely just saying these people were not up to scratch. Now, some of these employees are now on LinkedIn fighting back because essentially, if it's known from your LinkedIn presence, from your resume that you've been laid off recently, then you are in that bracket of quote unquote low performers. How do you feel about that? Like, how would you combat that if you were the individual, or do you think that Meta are just capping, they just wanted to lay people off and they're looking for an excuse to kind of brand it in a certain way?
The way that I've approached this is to actually try and like piece together the stories, the narratives I can find of people who are laid off, who have been willing to share their stories on LinkedIn, on social media. And it's really interesting because you do have people who have said, and I'm looking at one engineer in particular that was quoted, I think in was it Fortune or Business Insider, a Fast Company, one of these articles. Yeah, here we go. Fast Company, Joshua Latshaw, data scientist at Meta, worked there nearly 5 years. He had like exceeding expectations in 2020, 2021, 2022. Now, where it gets interesting is that he then had leave. So I think he took parental leave. He was off. He was about to start a long-term sick leave. So I think what's happening is it's not just about performance, really. It's about, for lack of a better word, dead weight. It's like who is on payroll but not being productive.
Right.
And that now is all under the umbrella term of low performance, which is kind of scary, right? Because if you are someone who is a parent or has had some kind of medical condition change, I don't know, long COVID, all these kinds of things, you might have thought that you were protected through your terms and conditions of your contract or whatever, your employment rights, to have sick pay, sick leave, long-term leave, whatever you might have negotiated with HR and your manager. But now under this umbrella of poor performance, quotation marks, you're now being booted out of the company. You might have actually been a high performer, but poor performance, the definition of it is literally now just like who's on payroll,
Right.
who's not producing. And if that's you, it doesn't matter what you did before. Bye. And I think that's scary.
But I don't think we can necessarily assume that everyone that's been laid off is somebody who was on, paternity leave, or they just said that they're sick and they can't come into work. I'm sure there are a cohort of people who the business just wanted to manage out. And I feel like we're now, especially in the era of Doge, we're just now in this era now of just far more cutthroat capitalism, cutthroat society. We've got a lot of sociopaths in power, and there's none of this like, we're going to improve you, we're going to manage you up, we're going to, it's just like, you got to go. And in this Doge era, we don't have to sugarcoat it anymore, basically, right? And I feel
Show
like
me your
this all
masculine
started,
energy. Show
honestly,
me your masculine energy.
I feel like this all
if you don't have
started,
enough,
though,
you're out. Yeah.
I feel like we can look back and say the inflection in this universe, this version of a timeline, came about when Elon bought Twitter and laid off 90% of the team, basically, in that situation. Because then it gave the signal to other tech CEOs that, listen, you can lay off a bunch of people. One, the market will reward you. And two, maybe nothing catastrophic will happen to your company. So now we're still in that ramification where, like, even after doing wave after wave of layoffs at Meta, they're still thinking to themselves, yo, we need to get rid of the quote unquote fat. So obviously my commiserations to those people. I hope they bounce back. But obviously it can't be easy to have that attached to your name. And I commend them for, like, trying to fight back against that. I would be on LinkedIn. That's for damn sure.
Oh, this is like reputation management at this point. I'd be like, yo, this is no performance. I think it would be really interesting because, I mean, America is so litigious. Like, if someone is energized enough, trying to do some class action thing, I think would be sensible. It's not like Meta doesn't have the money. You know what I mean? So if I were someone who had been on some kind of like long-term sick leave, especially if it was because of how stressful my job was or how much traveling I had to do or or whatever, I would 100% be trying to like find out who else had similar circumstances and therefore whose human/employment rights are being violated by being categorized as low performance, when actually it was like a health/disability related thing. Get some money out of that. I mean, people are coming for Meta. Our friend Dominic Midori Davis at TechCrunch shared the story of the Facebook Meta exec who's suing the company for sexual discrimination and sexual harassment. Meta, maybe they're laying people off because they have so many settlements to make. Who knows? I don't have an inside scoop on that. That was just very alleged. But yeah, I don't think this is the last we're going to hear of this. And I think people will probably, take action.
Yeah, let's
But you
see.
know what's really interesting? I am old enough to remember the 2008 recession, credit crunch. Some of our listeners will be like,
Ancient.
I was born in 2008. Don't tweet me that if you were, because that would make me feel old. But anyway, that happened really fast, right? So it felt like over the course of a few months. Like I remember one of my friends was like doing an internship in Lehman, and she was like on the train to Canary Wharf, and I picked up the
Damn.
Financial Times, and it was
Lehman
like
Brothers.
Lehman collapses, and she
Wow.
was like, oh snap, like on her way to her commute, and everything happened really quickly then, just in terms of like, we're in a recession, there's a credit crunch, prime mortgages, boom, boom, boom. It's like a house of cards, in real time. And what's really interesting about the bust period that we're in now, which is following that boom that we had during COVID, confusingly, because it's like we were in a pandemic, but economically things were good, especially in tech. Everything's happening in slow motion. And I think it's harder for us to process it. I mean, tech layoffs started in 2022, 2022, 2023, 2024. We're in 2025. We're in year 4 of tech layoff season. It's not even a season anymore. It's an adjustment.
Yeah.
It's a new reality. And I think
100%.
it's taking a really long time for that to sink in. And it's taking a really long time for us to accept that the glory days are in the distant, increasingly distant past.
Yeah, 100%. So speaking of greed, people are saying there's a significant amount of biblical greed that we're seeing here with some of these concert ticket prices that have been released. Not pointing out any names, but essentially the Cowboy concert tour has caught a bit of flack. And
How are
the
you going to say
Beehive
you're
wants
not
to come
going
for
to
me
say
again.
any names?
I
This
mean,
ain't
I'm not saying this.
Texas.
The people are saying this. I'm not saying this. I mean, last time, obviously, I criticized her strategy pertaining to her brands, and I thought she could probably do it a bit better. But who am I? Who the hell cares my opinion about that? But in terms of this now, I'm seeing people saying
Look,
that
childcare is
prices are just too
expensive.
high.
Childcare is expensive, and who knows what's happening in that marriage? Like the best divorce lawyers come at a steep price,
So
allegedly.
apparently, ticket prices are ranging from $70 to $1,000.
Okay, but $70 is accessible.
I mean, that's when you need the binoculars, though. That's from the bleachers. That's from you're
She
at
didn't
home
design
basically.
the stadium. She didn't
Yeah.
design the stadium.
You're outside the stadium. You're at home basically. And then if you want really, I think the good tickets probably start, minimum $150 to $250. What do you think people should just pay these prices and be like, if you want to see these stars, just go for it?
People are going to think I'm coming for them today. Okay. But here's the thing. I just feel like it's my responsibility to reality check people, because sometimes we are not appreciating artists enough. Personally, I feel that. I have friends who were like on the Spotify homepage, featured in this, featured in that. When the royalty check came at the end of the year from Spotify, after being in all these playlists, getting all these plays, they divide it up between them. They get £30 each. £30 each for all the, studio time, social media, tours become the place where you can get paid. And I just think it's really, I just think it's like disingenuous of us as fans to have unlimited access to music for pennies, literally pennies, and then get annoyed when artists charge a lot of money for ticket prices. Okay, $1,000, fine. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. Like, obviously those ridiculous tickets, it's price discrimination, it's economics. You can fly a plane in super, super cheap economy, you can fly a plane in first class. It's the same thing with a concert experience. And I just think people are like, where are artists supposed to get money from? Like, you're mad at the wrong people. Be mad at the record executives. Be mad at the lawyers who don't negotiate good enough deals for their talent. Like, be mad at them. But like, hating on the artist. I mean, again, Beyonce is someone who does like a lot of great work, a lot of great philanthropic work, a lot of great advocacy, and we're focusing on like one narrow discomfort or inconvenience and making like a big issue out of it. This is where I think capitalism like exposes us a little bit. We're so used to being comfortable. The minute something is not accessible enough for us as already incredibly privileged people, we get angry and try and make it into a big deal. I'm not having it. I'm not having it.
You're not having it, no.
You tell me. What about you?
I see where people are coming from. Where is the limit here? Are you going to say the same thing if it's $2,000 a show? I think.
Yeah, but there's a ticket that's $70.
No, but I think people wish that, because you're talking about artists that are struggling, up and coming artists. This is not who we're talking about. We're talking about people who have a significant amount of wealth, regardless of whether they tour ever again.
But Beyonce's an industry. It's like buying Prada. right? It's like buying Prada. You're not expecting to go into Prada and buy £5 jeans. Like, it represents something now. Like, as a brand, it represents something. It represents a lifestyle. It represents whatever. And you want to be the person where people are like, oh, you're wearing Prada. And in a way, Beyonce is the same thing. Like, Beyonce is so much more than just a person. She's an institution, and she's an entrepreneur, and she's an icon, and she just won Album of the Year at the Grammys. And now you want to access her for peanuts? Who do you think's paying for Beyonce's makeup artist, costume designer, personal trainer, choreographers? Like, it's an industry. It's like you got to invest to maintain. You see what I mean?
But I think I want to fact check definitely the price rises, because I think I'm basing it on a lot of anecdotal. I'm basing it on a lot of anecdotal, what people have said to me, that they bought tickets for $150. Now that same ticket price is significantly more expensive. So, and that tour was what, maybe 12 months ago, 18 months ago. I went to one of the shows, and it was an amazing show.
So did I. It was great.
But what I will say is, I just feel like artists need to be more tapped in and understand who their consumer is. And if you want to have an audience that's primarily, oil sheiks and Mark Zuckerberg and his family, that's fine. But if you're going to claim in any sense that you still want your art to be accessible to the average person, I don't know. I feel a bit wrong. I feel like there are other artists out there who are more aware of where their fan base is. And I think this is a bit tone deaf.
Beyonce, this is the thing. This is where I get, like, I'm not even like Beehive, la 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 la. Like, people are cultishly obsessed with the world that she has created, with the art that she created, with what she achieved, and then they want to access her for the price of a cinema ticket. Reality check.
Okay, we'll leave that to the audience.
She's a premium artist. I'm sorry, and you created that. Do you know what? The Beehive got themselves to blame. Supply and demand. Supply and demand.
Do you know what? Okay. Do you want to talk about the latest kind of fallout with kind of DEI? I guess we should kind of talk about it, considering that we're both kind of impacted by that in terms of our companies and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on the company scaling back? What you've been hearing, word on the street?
My hot take is that we're focusing on the wrong story, personally, right? We're all talking about the backlash to DEI. We're talking about the ideological warfare, and we're basically like centering white men in the narrative, right? So we're like, Elon Musk said this now, Donald Trump said this now, and it's like when you go to the cinema and it's like a rom-com and it's all through the male gaze, and you're like, ugh, and then you watch a movie that's through the female gaze and you're like, okay, this is relatable and this feels authentic and this is actually what I care about. It's happening with DEI, where it's just like, I don't care about what the people who were, one, never invested in the work anyway, two, never cared about the work anyway, three, never made an effort in the work anyway, have to say about this space that they have never been interested in and have always been hostile to. And we're centering their opinions and we're centering their perspectives in all of the discourse. And it's so frustrating. The story should be about, how is this going to impact the people who do the work, people like us, like the practitioners, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, and how is this going to impact the people who benefit from the work, which is ultimately all of us. So yeah, what's missing from the discourse for me is like, what happens to entrepreneurs like us? And what happens to the teams that we've built and we've created? And what happens to the impact that we've driven if we continue to be under attack and we continue to face hostility? So many people who innovate in DEI already had a corporate job or did like the standard accelerated incubators and were like, wow, here's an untapped market. Here's underserved market. Here's impact that not enough people are working on and I'm going to do. And now these people like us, have become the enemy. Like, that should be the story, because if this continues, who knows what's going to happen to our businesses? Who knows what's going to happen to our teams? And who knows what's going to happen to the impact we're making? Why isn't that the story? I'm going to get off the soapbox now. You can talk.
No, I agree. I think I've been talking to a lot of companies, obviously, like internally, a lot of the big companies that you're seeing the headlines about, and the individuals inside those companies who were doing that work or cared about that work, they're floundering. They don't really know what's happening. A lot of them are just getting like directives saying, we're not doing this stuff anymore. But does that mean that you literally want me to stop? I'm about to get laid off, and I'm just sitting here waiting for the axe to fall on my neck. And it's a very interesting time. That's all I can say. And there are still companies out there. So shout out to people like Costco, and there's a few other brands that have said, no, we're going to carry on doing what we're doing. I think even JP Morgan came out. Jamie Dimon said, we see it as additive to our company, this sort of work, and there is an ROI, even financially. So there's still companies out there doubling down, but obviously there's a lot of turmoil with a lot of people who centered their careers around this for the last kind of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So let's see how it plays out. And it's very interesting as well. So on peopleofcolorandtech.com, our media site, like, these are the articles that get significant amount of traffic now. Everyone wants to see like what's going on, the DEI layoffs. And I think it's fear. people are scared. What does this mean? Like, what changes are there going to be? What companies do I want to support? Who are the companies that are doubling down? And can we kind of get behind those companies and show them that actually can be in solidarity with those companies? But it's a state of flux.
I also feel like, an absence of this work makes work quite unbearable for a lot of people, right? The absence of DEI has made work quite unbearable for a lot of people, regardless of your lived experience. And people's privileges change over time. You might start work as someone who doesn't have a physical disability, and a few years be someone who does have a physical disability. You might start work as someone who doesn't have any dependents or caregivers, and a few years later you are someone who does have dependents or is a caregiver. And I just think that people want to know who still cares about this work, because that's where they want to work, and that's who they want to buy products from, and that's who they want to buy services from, and they want to see who is attacking this work, because those are the people that they want to avoid. And I've now again lived long enough to know 4 years, it's not going to be that long. I mean, at this rate, it's going to feel long, but it will come and it will go. And yeah, now DEI is just the bogeyman. It's like, hey, instead of looking at the like complete incompetence with which we are handling inflation, healthcare, immigration, real material issues, look at DEI. Go over, look at DEI and be distracted. And we're falling for it every time.
And the worst thing is, actually, to me, they're always looking for like new words to replace the N-word. And a lot of times, the last kind of 4 or 5 years, it was like, it went from like critical race theory to woke, now it's DEI. So anytime there's some situation that's gone left, they're like, oh, it must have been a DEI hire behind it, or this plane crashed, it must have been a DEI hire. It's code word, man, for the N-word. You just can't say it no more. And there's a fantastic clip from a Republican kind of policy advisor from like the 70s, and he was explaining the strategy of how they used to rile up their base, and he was basically saying along the lines of like, we can no longer say the N-word, so we'll say things like states' rights and integration and busing. Then later on in the 80s, we can't say that. We can't say those things anymore. Maybe we say urban, or maybe we even say things like tax cuts, because now we're getting very, very removed from the original purpose of it. But the final reality is that Black people get hurt worse than white people. So they're always looking for ways to kind of send subtle codes to their voting base, which is that we're hurting predominantly Black people and you guys are going to be fine. But what they don't realize is that now there's been a bunch of veterans that have come out and said, oh, I'm losing my job, because they didn't realize that they were part of the DEI, that they were part of the inclusion, that actually there was a lot of companies that specifically were looking to hire veterans above and beyond their percentage in the population, because they were like, we want to support veterans and we want to include them because of what they've done. But that's actually now being dismantled also. So there's a lot of Trump voting, quote unquote, Republican dudes who are like, hold on, wait, what? You're impacting me too. And it's like, all right, cool. We tried to warn you. We tried to give you the heads up, but you didn't want to hear it. So yeah, stay strong, everyone out there. I think on that somber note, we'll leave this episode of Techish. Hit us up at Techish Pod. We are now on Threads as well, Instagram as well, YouTube.
Okay, cool, nice. How's that working
YouTube.
out? Are we in the metaverse?
We are in the metaverse, yeah.
I have some shout outs, by the way.
Oh yeah, go for your shout outs, go on.
Cool. So as you all know, I've written a play, The First Woke War, very topical given the earlier topic of conversation. We have our first reading of the play in London, the week of International Women's Day, and I launched a Kickstarter to raise funds to pay our amazing team, our actors, director, producer, etc. It's not too late to donate. You can head to tinyurl.com/Abadesi Kickstarter. ABADESI Kickstarter. And there's lots of different pledges, like a shout out on Techish. So I want to give a huge shout out to Ania and Dominique, and also to the wonderful Arlen Hamilton, who's been our biggest backer so far. So thanks, everybody.
Dope. All right, cool. Catch you next week, everyone. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.